I know nothing at all, but I've tried giving my all.
Welcome to the Rebel Podcast. I'm so excited to share with you a book interview today. And we're going to talk about a story based on real life. We all have marveled at the rags to riches stories of people like Elon Musk, who came from South Africa, immigrating into Canada at the age of 17, who now has a net worth of over $230 billion. As a co-founder of PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, he has definitely revolutionized industries like space exploration, electric vehicles, and AI. Well, then our next pair of billionaires, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, both immigrants from Russia, and they co-founded Google in 1998, which clearly has transformed the way we all access information online. Their net worths are $135 billion each. Today, Google still remains one of the top influential companies in the world. As Americans, we all love these success stories. We want to learn from these stories and take what we learn and turn it into a guidebook or a roadmap for our own success. Our interview today is with a new author who has written his first book at the age of 75. I love it. It is an incredibly written story that captures your heart and your mind. It is based on a true story with historical attributes woven into it about a poor orphan who was illiterate and knew he had to escape the ravages of the Irish potato famine, death, and poverty by sailing to America in 1854. Mr. Kearney is joining us today to tell us the story of his great-grandfather and how his journey to find his roots led him to write this fascinating book, Eyes That Cannot See. I hope that you'll join us and that you will too take a look at this fascinating book. I think it should be made into a mini-series. And here to help us tell that story today, our co-host for the interview. So Waylon Kearney is the nephew of Kent Kearney, and he will take us through that journey and share some cool family artifacts with us. So stay tuned. This is going to be an exciting book review. Welcome to the Rebel Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about this exciting book, and my co-host, Waylon Kearney, is going to help us because this is an exciting journey that's based on a true story from your own family.
Yeah, it's my uncle wrote his first book at the age of 75. This is a book, it's based on a true story. It's about my great-great-grandfather, who was an orphan. He was an Irish immigrant who came over to avoid impending death, basically, due to the potato famine. And my uncle writes beautifully about his experience, including the Civil War, becoming an early homesteader, just the experiences of an Irish immigrant looking for a new life.
A new life, a safe haven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we will have the author with us today via Zoom. And the name of this book, in case you'd like to order it, because let me tell you, I think they need to make this into a mini-series. It is that interesting and compelling of a story. It's called Eyes That Do Not See. It is a novel by Kent B. Kearney. Kent is going to join us today from Colorado, where he lives. And then wonderfully, I just think that this is so cool that you were able to bring this today, Waylon. There's a chair that's talked about in the book. And bear in mind that the main character, Henry Kearney, was an orphan. He was illiterate. He was poor. And he was just a very young person when he worked hard to bring himself over to the United States, the land of opportunity. And this gentleman came here in 1854. Waylon was lucky enough to inherit the chair that they're going to talk about in the book. And he's also brought another artifact that he's going to share with us today, and it's Henry's hammer.
Right. Yeah, this hammer was, well, we think with 99% accuracy that this was used building his sod house and later his son's first house on his homestead. So this hammer is probably from the 1880s. Yeah, it's just amazing to have something like this that was part of our family's history.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you were lucky enough to inherit these things. So we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to share that with you. So think about your own family and think about artifacts that you might have and the stories that you might write. Hope this will be an inspiration for you. And now we're going to go live on a Zoom with Kent Kearney. First, here's a sneak peek at the rocking chair that's famous in this book and our main character, Henry Kearney. Well, Kent, thank you so much for joining Waylon and I today. Waylon has talked so much about your book, and I tell you, this Eyes That Do Not See, this is an excellent novel, and I was fascinated because it is based on a true story. And I was fascinated because Waylon has shared with me that you went on this journey to find your roots and to understand your history. That took you all the way back to Ireland. And if you would be so kind to give me a moment, I want to read one of the passages out of this book because I think it just would give everybody a sense of how interesting and compelling the story is. So
fine.
Thank you. So I'm going to read on page 138 of Eyes That Do Not See, and it's under a heading called Bang. Colonel McNett had drawn his revolver and put a bullet in the middle of Keating's chest. Keating stumbled and fell backward as two sentries pulled and rushed in. McNett motioned for them to take the still twitching body away. He then turned to Henry and said, "Your boss said you were a horse trainer. Is that true? Do you want to continue down the Mississippi with the horses to New Orleans? Or do you want to join him floating face down in the river?" "I think I'd rather go with the horses." "Good answer." Summoning the corporal outside, the colonel said, "Take this man back to the barge, and along with all the recruits and draft horses, send them down to New Orleans and have them report to Camp Walker." Wow, what a choice. Kent, tell us about Henry and his qualities that you admired and why you think that's important and how it may have affected your life.
Well, I think I, like most people, don't know a whole lot about their great-grandparents. We knew he was an Irish orphan and had supposedly been a jockey in Ireland or England. We had growing up heard that he had come to Chicago and been swindled out of his land. We knew he was a Civil War veteran on the Confederate side, and we knew he was a homesteader, and that was about it. In 2017, my youngest daughter, Sean, and I went to Ireland to see if we could find out more about Henry. And we did find out a lot about him, But in the tour around Ireland, the tour director would read us the history of Ireland between stops. And I read those books, and I describe it as kind of an epiphany for me, because I don't think hardly any Americans realize what the Irish went through. And you think about the time from the Irish famine till the start of the 20th century, 1900, everything that happened, and my great grandfather got to experience that, for better or for worse. In his case, a lot of it was for worse. That got me to thinking about trying to write this story.
What characteristic do you think that he possessed that contributed to his success?
Well, I think determination and trying to better himself. In the book, I talk about how the Irish were deprived of any education. So when he arrived here, he was more or less an illiterate. Perseverance, determination, I guess.
Those are the things that I found really fascinating, because, I mean, you think of something as basic as being able to read. The English kept them from being educated, the Irish children, the Irish population, and to still have that determination to still make it and become something, and to still succeed, that resilience. We hear about the potato famine, but we don't hear about all of those other things, the ways that the English, sort of kept the Irish down.
And the other thing that I think is interesting, as far as history goes, is how devastating the potato famine was.
Right.
So they don't know exactly how many people left Ireland over the potato famine, but I did read it's somewhere between 40 to 80% of the people left Ireland
Or died.
or died.
Yeah.
Or died of starvation or disease.
Exactly.
That's about right, yes.
That is incredible. And I will tell you, Ireland is one of the most charming countries I've ever visited. And they're very approachable people. So
Yeah, very, very friendly.
yes.
Several people have remarked about that have been to Ireland, how friendly the people are.
They are. And one of the cool things that Wayland has shared with us and that you write about in your book is this chair.
Yeah,
Yes.
I brought along the rocking chair.
Yes.
So this was Henry's rocking chair is the subject of the book, and this would have been in his sod house. He probably would have purchased it from maybe a general store or a catalog like Sears and Roebuck or something. It's from I would say probably late 1880, maybe the 1890s. It has sort of a fancy spindle design, but was probably a really typical chair for someone on the prairie.
You're very lucky to have it. And then tell us about the hammer.
Oh. This hammer, my Uncle Kent actually, he gifted this to me over the summer at a family reunion. This was Henry's hammer that he would have used to probably build his sod house, at least the timber parts of it, the roof. And his son's house was also a homestead that was built in the 1890s or early 1900s. So it was given to my Uncle Kent by his father, and so it's just kind of passed through the family.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Have that handed down through the family is really one of a true gift. And I know not everybody in the family, any family likes antiques or heirlooms, but for those people who do and preserve history and preserve it for their family, I mean, hats off to you, because that's a special gift.
Yeah, it definitely is. The thing that I'm really proud of, I mean, just how well written this book is, but also that I mean, this is your first book and you started it. I shouldn't give away your age, but yeah, I know you are in your 70s. But I just think that's amazing. How did you start it? Because so many people have such a block with starting something like that, like writing your first book.
Okay, well, like I said, after Sean and I returned from our trip to Ireland, I had this kind of epiphany of the time period that Henry lived in with the Irish famine, the immigrant ships to New York, famine ships, then the fighting in the Civil War, then the opening up of the West for the homestead. He lived through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had bits and pieces of Henry's life, but I tried to figure out how do you connect all this? Coming across on the famine ship and 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 ending up being a horse trainer and in downstate Illinois. And then how do you decide you're going to homestead? And I thought, well, I'll just try to write his story.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out with the Irish famine and what that was like, and tried to incorporate what was actually happening in history with at the time of his life. So, like the workhouses, living in Skibbereen with all the other orphan children, uh, the actual battles in the Civil War. That because my older brother Gary did do some research and discovered his military record, or the only Henry Kearney we could find with a military record. And he joined the Second Louisiana, or was in the Second Louisiana. And then I went through books to find out what battles the Second Louisiana was involved in, and took that information. And then I had to try to tie that all in with getting back to Illinois, getting married, and then ending up homesteading.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wrote my whole story, and then I sent a copy of it to my brothers. And hey, this is pretty good, is the opinion I got. And I said, well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. But I sent it to a person to have it critiqued. And she's the one that kind of got me to finish writing the book and getting better organized,
Mm-hmm.
and because she liked the book. And from there, I went to self-publishing and editing and all that.
I think the book is very well written, and I'm a person who doesn't normally sit down and read a lot. I'm a doer and not a writer or a reader, but because I read mainly very technical or scientific things or stuff like that. And I found your book fascinating. I found it so interesting that it was hard to put down. But I actually felt myself kind of going back in history. And I love the Civil War. I love that whole time frame. And I could really envision this becoming like a mini series. I
Oh,
just
yeah.
think it's so well written, and so there's so many things happening in it. And I almost put it in the likes of Forrest Gump, like he went through so much in his life.
Yeah, it's the tale of America during that time.
Yeah,
Well, in
I mean,
Ireland, I guess, too.
it's like Henry is like the new Forrest Gump in
Yeah.
the story. Anyway, I thought it was fascinating, intriguing, and then it makes it even more interesting because, Waylon is telling me his backstories about stuff, and I'm just so excited that you can, live this and know this because it makes your life richer, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, for me personally, I find it it's inspirational to know that someone that you're related to, an ancestor survived all of this,
Yeah.
and went through all of this, and that resilience. I mean, that inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
And well, and also, I mean, obviously, it carried on to my Uncle Kent as well, because he wrote a book. Wrote his first book at when most people would maybe not be thinking about doing something like that. So I think it's incredible.
So Kent, I want to hats off to you, and I want to know what's next. What do you have on your radar that you want to do? Is it a movie? Is it a TV series? Or I don't know. Are you going to book a flight with Elon Musk to outer space? I don't know what you're going to do.
Well, I've heard from lots of people that it would make a great movie or a great miniseries, and I don't know who to contact about that. So, but that would be great if I could do something that way. And other than that, my children and people like Waylon, uh, they like to hear the stories of my brothers and I growing up. So I've been writing some short stories about events that happened when we were growing up, and I don't know if they enjoy it, but
I love it.
Yeah.
You like those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Waylon has shared some family photos, and I'm going to include them in this podcast. But I find the photos that you guys have to be incredible. They are so detailed and they are so telling of life and the way it is, for these people. I mean, you can look at their faces and see how hard they work and how determined they were, but yet how proud they were of everything that they did. And I think that's a trait that's really good in your family and probably came from Henry, right? It's like you said, Kent, it's like that determination, and it's like the tenacity that you all exhibit, but you also all exhibit a love for life.
Yeah, that's a kind of an Irish trait, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, hardworking but enjoying life
Yeah.
along the way.
Do you have any other hobbies, Kent, that people might find interesting?
If you've been to the Kearney website, you could probably see in your Facebook page. I've done some watercolor painting, artwork.
Ooh, very nice.
And I love to golf. So it's snowing today here, so that's on the.
Oh no.
The traits that sort of have carried through our family. I mean, as you can, when reading the book, the tenacity and also the one thing that sort of sticks out to me though, like the how horses were involved in his life, and how it seems like any major decision or life change kind of involved horses or
revolved around horses.
Yes, and his love of horses.
Yeah, because I put that in that he loved horses at a very early age. I think he probably did, and he and his son Sam had a horse ranch. So, and I didn't say that about when we went to Ireland to check on Henry, we went to the genealogy center there in Dublin and tried to find out more about him and being a jockey. And they couldn't find anything, but what they told me was that he may have very well been a steeplechase jockey, and that organization didn't start until after Henry had immigrated to the United States, so there would be no record back when he was doing that. So that's where I decided that Henry was a steeplechase jockey.
Yeah.
And brought that forward with his love of horses, and that's how he got involved with the Civil War. That story I had never heard about. My older brother Gary, that was doing the genealogy stuff, he heard that from my dad's oldest sister, that they were transporting horses down the Mississippi and got waylaid. And that's how he got involved in the Civil War. So that story has at least a grain of truth to it.
As all good Irish stories do. Right?
Yeah.
It's always there somewhere.
Yeah.
I've been to Ireland. I used to work over there, and I find their pubs fascinating, and I find their beer delightful. When you were there, what was something that you ate or drank that you guys enjoyed?
Well, if you go back to Ireland and you go to the Keating Brewery, Keeling Brewery. You write your name up on the wall as high as you can write it. My name is up there.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
And the Guinness Brewery, we went there
Yeah.
a couple times and learned how to pour the perfect brew. And the entire island was fascinating. We went to a Irish farm, which I enjoyed because having grown up on a farm ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we went to in Dublin. Sean and I were there about a week before our bus tour started, so we visited the Dillingham Jail and Castle at Kilkenny. That was amazing. And
They have
several of the
beautiful castles there.
yes, yes, and several of the castles we saw several, and they were all fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned about Ireland that it just floored me as an American. When we have St. Patrick's Day, it's like, oh, there's all this beer, there's all this drinking, there's all this celebration. And in Ireland, it's a very sacred, holy day, and you go to church.
A little bit different than here.
A little bit different. And I'm like, wow. I thought there was going to be a big parade. I thought there was going to be a big celebration. And, you know, the hoof, foot, and mouth disease was going on when I was there. So you were not allowed to go to a farm. You were not allowed to even go out, touch dirt or anything. And then when you went back to go home at the airport, you had to walk through your shoes, everything had to go through this solution, had to be sanitized so that you weren't spreading the disease. And then they were piling up animals and just burning them. It was just, you know, it's just, to this day, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that as Americans, we're
not aware of.
Yeah, we're not aware of. I would never guess he's 75.
Yeah.
Going to be 78.
Has a young attitude that not everybody hangs it up and just wants to stay home and zim out. You know? So this chair has very significant meaning in the book. And I would recommend that you take a look at the book and buy it and read it and find out why this chair is so important. Yes, we have told you a fraction of what's going on in the book. So I think if you like The Color Purple, if you like miniseries that are on Netflix, you'll find this book right in that zone. Yeah. Take a quick peek at the gallery. Here's a picture of Henry and Mary Ann Kearney in 1890s. Here's Henry's favorite rocking chair, the hammer he used to build his houses, and the book about him and his life, Eyes That Do Not See by Kent B. Kearney. Read it and enjoy it and tell us what you think. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kent. The book is fascinating. You did very well. I'm sure if a producer or director or one of these TV executives is watching from Netflix, they could not go wrong making a miniseries out of this. So well done, and I hope you write more books. Believe in yourself, go and glow.